So I picked up one of these cheap Amazon RC cars. They're about 30 bucks or less. But the thing that annoys me on them is the steering and the throttle. I'm used to more expensive RC cars where you have a little bit of finesse with the steering and the throttle. So I thought I would just throw some cheap components in this to make it a little bit more user friendly. Not saying that this isn't drivable the way it is. It just is the way that they design these RC cars. They just have a button. I'm going to tear this apart so I can show you. But essentially, they just have a button that presses the steering left or right. So it's all or nothing, left or right or center, because it has a little spring that returns it back to center. And the same goes with the throttle. So it's just like a button that presses forward or backwards. A Mini Z is what they call these by Kyosho. It's essentially like the same size, same category. I think this one's a little bit bigger in scale, but with this steering, you have a lot more range when you're going to steer. So if you're trying to corner really good, or you're trying to drift, it's a lot easier. And the same goes with the throttle as well. So if you didn't know already, or if you're new to the hobby, these are the basic components that are already in this RC car. It's just these are cheaper versions, but a step up from what's in that RC car. This RC car has a circuit that like everything is built into, kind of like what this has. But this is basically just all the components that are broken down individually. So you have your receiver, which communicates with your transmitter. You have your speed controller, which sends power from your battery to your motor, and that's what spins your wheels. Obviously, you have your battery, and that's going to power your ESC, and your ESC is going to power your receiver through your ESC. And then you have your steering component, which is this servo. So this servo, instead of having a spring that makes the steering go back to zero, this is going to have a potentiometer in it, which is going to read the values that the servo position is in. So this gets powered off of the receiver and receives the input from the transmitter. So those are the basic components, and I'm basically just going to rip everything out of this RC car and just start to replace these components in place of what's in that vehicle. Alright, so I got this torn apart, and this model is pretty easy because it just has 4 E-clips. No point in the body coming off or the way that they designed it that way, but you can see the little circuit board in there. Got the motor wires here. I got the steering motor wires here, which we're gonna not use that at all, but we're gonna try and get that other steering servo to live inside of here. And then solder up the motor wires to the ESC. I think this compartment's big enough for the battery. Maybe have to do some cutting. I'm not sure. Alright, so far that wasn't too bad. I just unsoldered the wires off of the original circuit board here. Even took the original switch out and was able to use the switch from this ESC. I tested it on the test rig to make sure which way was on and which way was off, so I got that correct. So yeah, I just soldered the motor wires directly to where the motor plugs into the back of this ESC, and then I just mounted the receiver. But now I'm working on the steering, and the way that they have this steering rigged up, it's self-centering, so no matter what, it's always going to go back to the center. And since we're using a actual servo that has its own center, we don't need the spring in here. That's just adding extra force that it takes to turn that. So if we take this spring out right here, then we will no longer have that center that this is trying to go back to. And then we can use this just as the arm to move the wheels from the servo. And that's what I'm going to be working on now. Alright, so you can see how much material in here I had to cut away. This is where that motor used to live, and this is where that spring was that kept it centered on each side. So I had to trim some of this plastic back here that was just supporting for the motor, and then I also had to trim some of the plastic inside of this top cover so that this servo could fit in there. And then I 3D printed this little bracket here that I made so that I can transfer the steering from the servo to the pitment arms for the steering. So you can see I got that new arm put in there, and then I just bent up a piece of wire to connect the servo to the new steering linkage, and you can see that basically all that slop is now gone, and it has a much better connection to the servo motor. So I hooked it up to one of these servo drivers, and once I mount this motor down, and basically just cut away everything inside of this cover so that this cover could still fit down over top, and I might use some double stick tape and some glue down in there to make sure that this doesn't move, because once you set your 0, which how the car is going to travel straight, if this overextends, it's going to push the servo around. You can see it moving, so you want to make sure that this servo is secured down enough to where it doesn't move all over the place. But see, now I have a lot better control over the steering. So now I'll get this piece put back onto there and then get the servo secured. Alright, so I got it back together, and you can see I cut probably way more than I should have out of there, but that's alright. So everything's still buttoned up pretty good, and you can see I got it hooked back up. That's it, it works pretty good. Motor doesn't really move around a whole lot, and I'll when I program this into my controller, I'll just put some limits in there so that it can't move more than it should, but I think that'll work. Still kept the suspension. Alright, so this isn't actually the battery that I'm going to be using. I have basically this type of battery pack, but it has a different connector, and I just ordered a new set. Something's a little clinky. That's really weird. Doesn't feel like it's binding that much. And also the thing is backwards, so we're going to reverse the throttle. Almost feels like it's in the back. So I'm going to take the back apart and see if I can't figure out why it's binding. Alright, so I fixed that issue. The problem was when I had this servo in here, it was pushed to the side a little bit, and there's a gear down in there, and this servo was pushed up against that gear. And now there's no interference. So now, oh, steering's backwards too. And then alright, so I actually have this thing at like 65% because it's really pushing the limits of what this RC car is capable of. But with the grippy tires on there, it's definitely a lot more spunky. And I'll crank it up to 100%, but